All right, James Moore, welcome to the program. Heritage Minister, you went to the show last night. What was Iran's problem with the documentary that you saw? What did you hear?
Well, the documentary is obviously very critical of the Ahmadinejad regime and their aggressive pursuit of nuclear weapons, and so that was the cut and thrust of the film. And obviously, they don't. It's not exactly a regime that's known for tolerance of views that are in dissent of the Ahmadinejad regime. So they wrote me a letter saying that they hope that the movie wouldn't be shown. What was really outrageous, though, is that the Iranian embassy here in Ottawa went to Library and Archives Canada, who had an agreement already set up to air and to show this movie, an agreement with a Canadian citizen to put on this film. The Iranian embassy went straight to Library and Archives Canada and said, "Don't put on that film. It's not good. We don't think it's good for Canada-Iranian relations." And Library and Archives Canada cancelled it. Well, that's not a decision for Library and Archives Canada. Their job isn't to bend to the will of the embassy of Iran or any other country. Their job should then have been to contact me and say, "I've got this complaint. How do you suggest the government of Canada as a policy perspective go forward?" So they made a mistake and they canceled the movie, but they put it on last night. And by the way, Super Bowl Sunday, the movie aired about 30 minutes after the kickoff of the Super Bowl. It was a packed house, sold out, and it was a fantastic showing, and a lot of people came almost in solidarity with the principle that we will not be bullied against having the opportunity to watch a movie that we choose to watch in Canada.
I was going to say, if they hadn't kicked up a fuss, how many people would have been at that screening instead of cheering on Green Bay?
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, they had a great number of tickets sold already, so it was really inconvenient for Fred Litvin, who's the guy who put on the show to begin with. But certainly the fuss brought a lot more attention to the movie than I suspect President Ahmadinejad would have been comfortable with. But that's his bed, and he can lie in it.
Have you told the Iranian embassy, "Hey, come on, you can't keep dictating to government what movies are shown in what government buildings"?
Well, I've said so through the media time and again.
Pretty clear.
Well, yeah, and the very fact that there's not one member of the Ottawa Press Gallery, not one, broadcast, print, anybody who can get a member, someone, a staff, anybody, an official from the Iranian embassy here in Ottawa to go on the record and to speak about what it is that they did, how they interfered with Library and Archives Canada, or the letter that they wrote to me saying that this was a bad idea. I mean, it was a clear diplomatic overreach, overstepping, and an inappropriate action on behalf of the Iranian embassy. And I think the government of Canada is standing up and saying, no, the movie will be shown, and you don't have a right to tell any Canadian what film they can or cannot watch, or to intimidate an agency of the government of Canada was, I think, an important statement.
It's a bit of a difficult question, but would the flip side apply? Do you think the government of Canada would have a place in saying no to a movie being shown inside a public building?
No, I mean, the only circumstance where I could see that being the case would be if there was any threat to public safety. But other than that, look, the National Art Gallery has had in the past some displays and some exhibits that some people have thought was a little risque, but we're a country that believes in free speech, free expression. I'm the Minister of Culture. My job is not to dictate what kind of culture is acceptable or not, but to stand up against those who would intimidate those from having the right of free expression, and that's what happened at Library and Archives Canada.
All right, you were front row center, I think, last night. How many stars do you give this documentary? How good was it? I would give this a 4 out of 5. I mean, it's well worth watching. Obviously has a bent. It's a bit alarmist. Some of the prescriptions I wouldn't necessarily think were the right way to go. For example, they call for increased sanctions on Iran. One could have a debate about the sanctions that were in place on Iraq after the first Gulf War as to whether or not they were effective and what kind of sanctions that the documentary calls for. But overall, the way the documentary was done, the clips, look, from in the contemporary debate from Tunisia, sweeping east through to Egypt, the entire region, it's an important documentary, I think, that people see. Canadians, I think, are curious to educate themselves even more about what's going on in the region. And I think President Ahmadinejad, the Green Revolution that happened just over a year ago, I think Canadians are very sympathetic to a country. There are a lot of Iranian Canadians who are hopeful that Iran can be a country that's open and free and trading with the world. We as Canadians, we have no dispute with the people of Iran. We wish to have an Iran that's open and prosperous and trading with the world. What we have a problem with is a theocratic regime aggressively pursuing weapons of mass consequence, and this is something that is of great concern to Canadians. So flip the bird at Iran, go see the movie. But switch gears just quickly. There's a bit of a controversy following an appointment to the CRTC Vice President there. Vice President, Vice Chair, I guess.
Vice Chair.
Tom Pentafuntis, I think is a friend of some people in the PMO. His resume seems a little short on credentials for this. Why was he appointed?
No, he's thoughtful, experienced, educated, bilingual, and he'll do a great job as Vice Chair of the CRTC. Look, one of the people have said, well, he doesn't have a lot of experience in the broadcasting industry. Well, another way of saying the same thing, is to say that he has no conflicts of interest, no past, present, or future conflicts of interest. He's not a former employee of CTV or of Rogers or Bell or Cogeco. He's not a player. And a lot of these interests, as you can imagine, with the conversations that are going on and what's happening with Bell and CTV, what's happening with Shaw, and what's happening with Convergence, with fee for carriage or value for signal. These are very complex and important issues, and having somebody who comes from the outside, who's not beholden to some of the big players who have very big and expensive and costly and difficult and divisive issues before the CRTC, having somebody from the outside coming in who is thoughtful, independent, and doesn't have any conflicts of interest, I think is a good thing. I think Canadians would want that. So I think he'll do a fine job.
I guess I don't get a position at the CRTC ever now, eh?
Never.
Ever.
Not
that I ever want one anyway.